Hey everyone, you found another episode of Exploring Kodawari. My fiance Yanka and I started this project as a way to stay inspired and motivated, especially through the weird and empty feelings most of us have had during this coronavirus pandemic. And we found this word, Kodawari, to perfectly encapsulate an inspiring philosophy of life. That is to say, a kind of principle about how to live a more meaningful life and to stay on the path. And our guest for this episode is a person that I've had many of these types of life philosophy conversations with in the past. So I'm really happy we got to record one of them for a podcast. His name is Stephen McLean, and he's been a friend and trumpet colleague for the past few years. He's currently pursuing his doctorate in trumpet performance at Stony Brook University, and he's also about to begin his teacher certification for Alexander technique. But don't worry, we don't geek out about trumpet too much, because like me, he's an avid meditator, and he's geeky about philosophy and psychology. So the meat of our conversation was about music, meaning, and mindfulness. What makes music meaningful? Does examining the meaning of music spoil the magic of how it works? And why does music uniquely affect our psychology? I can't say we solved the mysteries of the universe, but it was a lot of fun to think through these questions out loud. All right. If you enjoy the podcast, please consider sharing it with friends, or you can take a second to leave a rating and a review in your podcasting app. And if you really want to help us out, consider going to the donation page of our website. It's linked in the episode notes, and you can make a one-time or recurring donation through PayPal. That's it for now. Enjoy the episode with Stephen McLean. 47. All right, we're going. Stephen McLean.
What's up, man?
Welcome to Exploring Kodawari.
Thank you for having me.
I basically will say your name in the introduction, that you play trumpet, but can you just give the minute backstory of who you are before we get into like philosophy?
Sure.
Which we inevitably will.
Sure. I'm a up-and-coming trumpet player, music teacher. I'm also about to work on teacher certification to be an Alexander technique teacher. I'm also a writer and avid meditator. Just happy to be here, man.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, all those things are how we always have good conversations, like when we're going to gigs and stuff, if we're carpooling.
Yeah.
We probably should have just recorded those. They would be way better than whatever this is going to be now that we're like forcing it. But meditation, you're also into like a lot of the psychology stuff I like to read.
Definitely.
And there's something about trumpet players, they just sync up. Well, when they sync up, they really sync up.
Yeah,
right?
Either that or we kill each other.
Yeah,
like Sparta.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Or sometimes, trumpet players just don't talk. Have you ever met those kind where they just like, you show up to a gig, you're like, how's it going? I'm Luke. And they're like, mm-hmm.
They're focused.
Yeah. Because they probably were getting in the zone to play Brandenburg or something like that. Yeah. How do trumpet players and violinists sync up? I think pretty well.
Yeah, we do. We are both, I would say, alpha.
Divas.
But we're supposed to be alpha,
Divas.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
A little diva-like, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you could ever date a non-musician?
A non-musical?
Yeah.
Music muggle?
Yes. Depends. They can't. It depends. If that's the only con, then yeah.
Okay. So they're at 10 on looks. They're at 10 on
everything else is good. They just like quit playing an instrument or never played an instrument. We could work with that, maybe.
Yeah.
We could work with
I
that.
don't think I've ever dated anyone that wasn't a musician.
That's what I mean.
Which is like such a shame, I guess. But I don't know.
Well, I just was thinking like musicians in general sync up, right? And then like trumpet players and sync up in ways that are too specific for violinists to give a shit,
Yeah.
So if we just switched into like full on trumpet player mode, everybody would be bored who isn't a trumpet player,
That's
right?
a fact.
And violinists could do that with strings and stuff. It's just weird. I don't think I could date a non-musician though.
They wouldn't. Why? You think they wouldn't get it?
Yeah, I just worry that like when you've gone a certain direction in music, you can hear things a certain way, and then you can't ever get someone to hear it that way unless they also have gone through that, right?
Yeah, there's a certain psychological, I don't want to say burden, but a certain mindset
You could say
that you
burden.
have. I guess
You mean like the burden of knowing the kind of truth Bach tells,
yeah, like
right?
that, or
Mahler.
Yeah, or even like having to go into a performance. You know what I mean? Like like mentally, like a performance that means a lot to you, like what that mentally takes, like, the preparation, the
rites of passage of like, oh, we both went through the same thing.
Yeah. Or even like having a bad performance.
Right.
if your girlfriend knows that you just had a bad performance and she's a musician,
They should know what's up.
Yeah.
she knows this.
They won't be like,
they
"Oh,
know what you
baby,
need.
tell me about
yeah,
it."
they know what you need. Like, yeah, it's a little different.
They'll be like, I'm going to leave that cat alone for a
Yeah,
while.
I'm gonna let him breathe for a little. I'm gonna let him get it together real quick.
Yeah. Why don't you just tell me how it went? What do you mean it didn't go well? Like, and it's like, I can't begin.
Or God forbid you come home and she's like playing it. She like recorded it on her phone or something, or like
Oh, like a recital or something?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing. But the other thing is just like, there's a personality type of musicians that it exists in other careers and stuff, but it's just rarer to find. I think so musician is the one quality, and the other quality, and we talked about this before, is if you're out there in the dating world and you're trying to like figure out who you sync up with, somebody who's like the opposite of into mindfulness and meditation,
that's tough.
sort of an asleep person.
Yeah, that's more for me. That's more of a deal breaker than the music thing.
I think
Because you
so.
can find somebody who maybe has a similar aesthetic sensibility, or sensitivity to aesthetic changes, aesthetics. Like if it's not music, maybe you can have a similar
Right.
a similar depth of somebody who's interested in film or who's interested in like art curation or something like that. But when there's no mindfulness, that's just like a whole different
Yeah.
that's a whole different
I
bag.
mean, I
right there.
believe those people are rescuable though. Like,
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I don't want to name anything, but I'm trying to rescue a friend lately about that. So
Well, anybody can be asleep, right?
yeah, exactly. So
You don't have to be rescued by a person. You could be rescued by just learning about the fact that this thing called meditation or mindfulness even exists.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
they never explored it.
That's true, or
Entirely
maybe they
possible.
were never exposed.
Yeah.
Do you remember
You
an age where that came online for you, where you were like, oh, I can be in a different place than where the thoughts are?
Yeah, that was huge for me. It was actually right before starting my master's. So I was about 22 or 23. And I don't know, something in me just said like I want to learn how to meditate. I'm not sure what it was, but I think I listened to a podcast or something and somebody mentioned meditation. And so I Googled like how to meditate, and like I didn't have an app or anything. I just sat for like 20 minutes.
20 minutes?
Yeah,
Wow.
I didn't know
That's a pretty adventurous for
I
the
didn't
first
even know
time.
the time. Yeah, I didn't even know the time that I didn't even know if that would be hard. Like I had nothing to gauge,
Yeah.
And it actually shocked me how fast the 20 minutes went by. Because it was the thing
Do
where
you think you were mostly lost in thought, or?
I was kind of like lost in the experience. I was more like in the inside of the experience. And that was my first time ever like there was nobody in the house. I was at my parents' house. There was nobody in the house. I was there alone. And I was like in the dining room. And so it was just like silence.
Mhm.
So the first thing, as you know, when you start meditating, you start hearing the sounds of just
Totally.
random stuff.
You're like, oh, the refrigerator is there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like all of that just started happening. I'm like, okay, let me come back to my breath. Let me try to come back to the breath. And in that struggle, the 20 minutes went by.
Sure.
And then I opened my eyes and I was like, whoa, that was 20 minutes?
Yeah.
Like,
And then the world comes flooding in when you open your eyes.
Yeah.
And it's such a different world.
yeah.
Yeah.
For
It's
sure,
like,
man.
I think you start to notice it in the beginning just from shifts, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just get one perspective before and after or something like that. The other thing that got me in the beginning was realizing how easy I thought it would be and how hard it actually is.
Yeah.
Years later, I can still often, depending on the state of mind, make it 5 to 10 breaths before you think it's not going to sneak up on you, but the stream of thought sneaks up on you and you get lost,
Yeah. It's really easy to get lost in meditation. It's like opening up a new relationship when you first start meditating. It's like you would think it's a linear progression, but it's not linear.
Not at all. Yeah. It's like learning the trumpet.
Yeah, it's not literally like, oh my God, man. Yeah. It's like you can, even if you have 5 days where quote unquote good days, even though we know there's not like a good day or a bad day, but 5 days where you feel like, wow, like I really found something. On the 6th day, there's no guarantee that your mind will be in the same place when you come to sit down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
That's
but
true.
it's just nice kind of having that ability to check in, like wherever you are. Like I feel like that's such an asset.
Yeah. It's become a good habit marker. Whenever you feel anything arising intense, you can have that. Let me just breathe
Yeah.
and check in from that place, that metacognitive place where it's like, all right, what should I do? Instead of being the person at the airport that freaks out, you take that breath and you go, this is really disappointing that you can't get us on that flight. What can you do to help me?
Yeah.
Instead of ending up on Instagram as the viral Karen video.
Why did I just thought of Curb, man?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Except in Larry's case, he's the hero.
Yes. Yeah.
Because he's always doing what my alter ego wants to do.
Oh, yes.
Yes. He's like unfiltered ego, just like
Yeah.
an unfiltered ego, just like walking around, stomping around on the rampage.
I've said this before. I forget how I phrased it, but something like Curb Your Enthusiasm. Like Larry is basically the opposite of Ram Dass. You know what I mean?
I mean, obviously, yeah. I like them both equally.
Yeah. I don't really respect people who can't engage with their Larry in their inner Larry, because it means you're not thinking about the world.
Yeah.
But you also want to have your inner Ram Dass that goes, I love you anyways, it's fine. You know? But Larry's just like, yeah, but technically I'm still right, you know? Like,
honestly, that's what gravitated me towards the show, because I have such a personality I have such a capacity to be able to go with the flow of whatever's happening. You know what I mean? And the fact that he never goes with the flow. I'm like, I need some of that in my life. Let me just watch the show. Maybe it'll rub
And then
off.
when he does go with the flow, because he has an interest in it going a certain way, he'll just fuck it up through
it never
another
works.
way.
Yeah, it never works.
Never works.
Because he's Larry. Yeah. Well, let's see. Do you want to just say like how you got into trumpet, how long you've been playing?
Sure.
Since we'll talk a lot about music, like what's your history with music?
With music, well, music in general, I come from like a kind of musical family. Not like a lot of professional work on the classical side, but on the gospel side, heavy. Like my father is a guitar player, is a guitarist, and he's kind of known like around where we live. And at the time when he was coming up, there is what they call a Pentecostal assembly. It's like basically like a big network of churches, like under the denomination of Pentecostal Christians. So he was kind of known playing guitar in that circle. And I have an uncle who plays drums and another uncle who sings, and I have another cousin who's like a vocal coach. So I was kind of always around music. And I was
that religious, like
in a kind of in like kind of like a sense where like I always connected to the music. You know what I mean?
It's an important distinction, because a lot of people who grow up with like the musical parents who send them to like Juilliard pre-K, it doesn't exist, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
it's a different energy.
Yeah,
for sure.
You're not going to connect to the music as much as the world of music and the skill building.
For me, it was like more like of like the direct experience of like being in a church,
visceral,
and like feeling like music happen like around me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like my dad always told like my parents. I went to my parents when I was like 6 after like my uncle played something on the organ, and I was just like, I'm gonna be a musician. Figured it out. We're good.
Yeah.
Like I know what I'm about to do. A lot of like, okay, again, not a linear progression, but that was kind of like my early, I was always very like connected on an emotional level with music. And going forward, my dad being a guitar player, unfortunately, like did not let me touch any of his guitars as a kid. You know, like when you're a kid, you have to pick an instrument.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'm gonna play the guitar. My dad's like, nah, we're good on that.
Yeah, we don't have any in the house.
Literally like, but he had an old flugelhorn in the attic that I found. And so I was like, can I play this? So he was like, yeah, go ahead. So I actually played flugelhorn for like half a year until I got a trumpet. Yeah, until I got a trumpet. So, and I still have that flugel. But
I remember one time I was watching a recital, or not even a recital. It was just like a gig you did at the local coffee shop.
Yeah.
And it was like trio concerts are really tiring. So you were getting tired, and then you switched to a piece on flugelhorn. And I remember commenting afterwards, I'm like, dude, you went from being like tired to like really comfortable. You're like, yeah, I grew up on flugelhorn. Like,
yeah, it's just easier.
It's like, hello, old friend. You know?
The trumpet is just so like beefy and like, it's not smooth sometimes, you know?
Traditionally harder to have endurance on flugelhorn as a trumpet muggle asking.
I think it's person to person.
Yeah, it depends.
I see.
I think my endurance on flugel would be low right now because I haven't played one in a while. But I feel like if I were to train primarily on flugel, I would have more endurance than trumpet. Something about the sound, you mellow it out and you don't go for that intensity and compact brilliance that you do on
the conical versus the cylindrical. Cylindrical.
Similar to a cornet, like playing those cornet solos is so much easier on cornet than on trumpet.
Yeah.
You feel like a chump on the trumpet.
Let alone like C trumpet or something. Yeah.
Oh God. Yeah. Like which is what we use in orchestra. When you play it on cornet, it's like, oh, okay, this is how this is supposed to feel. Like kind of easy if I do it right. It should feel effortless. Like,
Fluke was a similar thing.
Nice. So you went to undergrad, master's, ended up at the same school. We weren't in school together, I don't think, right?
No, you got out like a year before I showed up.
That's right.
Yeah.
I guess I went back to play in a few symphony concerts, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, a trumpet player who's awake. I'm going to talk to that guy.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if you remember this, but we had a gig the first time we actually had a conversation. We had a gig doing like, it was a rough gig. It was like Broadway. It was like a Broadway medley.
Oh,
it was like
it
was like 2 hours of like
Annie
and like Company. And
oh
like,
my god! So
West Side. It was about.
We had just gotten back from London. I think was it in November?
Yeah, I think so.
I think I was like jet lagged. No, I just got back from Turkey.
Oh, okay.
And I caught a stomach bug from her dad. So I remember being like, "Nice to meet you, dude. Yeah. By the way, I might bolt to the bathroom at any point."
Yeah, it was at dinner too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they fed us, right?
Yeah, they fed us. Yeah, that was crazy. And I don't know how the convo got to meditation, but one of us like slipped up and mentioned meditation, and then we talked like the entire time. Like,
yeah, that's totally right. Yeah, we were at that rehearsal or concert, whatever it was, and you're right. We were sitting in like the kids' cafeteria, just like shitty gigs, huh?
Yeah,
you know.
exactly.
And then I was like, oh shit, something about meditation, or you said it, and then it's jumped off from there.
Yeah, man.
It is a topic I always connect with people about if they are into it. It so easily jumps off.
Yeah, for sure.
It's more interesting than trumpet, that's for sure. You know?
I mean, well, it's so ever encompassing. You know what I mean?
Like, everything else is downstream of your mind, right?
Yeah.
That's the idea of it. Yeah,
for sure.
Let's talk about Alexander technique for a second.
Sure.
Can you say what that is? I mean, it very much goes along with the mindfulness thing.
Yeah.
The topic I really want to get to, like, I don't know if you remember, we had this talk like over a few beers some time ago. I forget when. And you were saying like, oh, if I design a course one day, we'll call it like music and meaning or something like that.
Yeah, music, meaning, and mindfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to get to the meat of the podcast at that. But let's talk about Alexander technique since I'm going to steal your time and learn about it anyways.
I got you, man. I got you. Alexander technique was one of those things like meditation where, you know, after you meditate for the first time, you kind of realize like, wow, like there's a whole nother dimension, for lack of better terms, of life that like I've been on autopilot, basically. So like meditation, which gives you kind of space to kind of watch your habits and the ability to disengage. Alexander technique does that from the perspective of the body, but not leaving out the part of the mind. It pretty much is based off the premise that the mind and the body are one totality. Mm-hmm. So
Ianka could get behind that. Yeah. She's been into similar stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm more and more convinced of that the older I get.
Yeah. And so it's basically how we all know from meditating that many times reoccurring habitual thoughts or thought patterns are doing our thinking for us, are doing our driving for us, or our talking for us. Yeah. Or playing for us or whatever, you know, or dealing with our challenges for us, and we're not really presently in the moment.
Driving all the way to work 20 minutes.
There you go. There you go. So, but Alexander technique is kind of like the missing link to that, because we know that happens mentally, but what is the repercussions on a physical standpoint? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Those same habits of the mind going in circular patterns.
The same habits.
What are those patterns of the body?
What are those patterns of the body?
Muscle tension that...
Because body definitely learns that, and then it stays with you. Yes. And then you have to make so much effort. Like imagine how many years you lived with that tension.
Yes. And as musicians, we know for a fact. I'll ask you guys, have you ever been... So think about a performance where you were just on, where like you couldn't miss a note if you tried to miss a note, like, and how your body felt in that. And then think of one where you totally bombed.
Oh God.
And then think of how your body felt. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or if you think of, you know, somebody yelling at you, how that makes your body feel, or somebody praising you, how does that make your body feel? You know what I mean?
It's very Jordan Peterson lobster-esque. I don't know if you've ever read that chapter where
it's at a deep level.
Open up when the serotonin is there and you're facing the world and confident, and you're posture closes down when the opposite is happening. You're scared of the world. You don't want to face it. You feel like there's no opportunities out there,
Exactly.
And we as trumpet players, I think, know that more than any other instrument. I don't know. This might not be true.
Excuse me.
But there's a degree to which you're putting yourself out there on an instrument like trumpet, which I think ingrains all the bad habits of music more than a lot of other instruments.
Yeah, and
I could be making an off-base claim. I've never held a violin bow in an audition and felt it shake or whatever. So
yeah, I mean, there's a certain breath aspect that like adds a layer for sure. I think it's in probably all instruments, but definitely all instruments. But believe it or not, Alexander technique is the creator of it. F.M. Alexander was a he was a reciter of I don't want to say an actor, but he was like a Shakespearean actor, for lack of better terms. And he was a professional. Then he started losing his voice, and he couldn't figure out why he was losing his voice in the middle of performances.
Yeah, you mean like it would just fail on him unexpectedly?
It would get hoarse, and then it would just stop.
Damn.
And he couldn't. He just totally lost his voice. So he would go to the doctor, and the doctor say, "We examined your vocal cords. There's nothing wrong with them." So he would say, "Okay." So he said, "Okay." The doctor said, "Just rest it, and you'll be fine." So he rested it, didn't do any reciting.
That'd be a great order to get from the doctor.
Yeah, he said,
I need you to not talk to anyone.
Yeah, just rest. Just rest. So he rested his voice. He was fine. His vocal cords wasn't losing his voice. Literally, as soon as he went to recite, by intermission, voice was gone again.
So he was using his voice in that interim, not publicly speaking, but it seemed okay. Seemed healed,
regularly, but not like performing. So that led him to the idea that, okay, this isn't something that I'm doing this isn't an injury. It's something that I'm doing while I perform.
Right.
So then that led him to recite in front of mirrors and try to figure out, what am I doing while I'm performing that's different than my everyday use. And he uses the term use because really the language with Alexander technique, like meditation, sometimes it's hard to wrap words around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that led to a series of discoveries that not only was he misusing himself while he was performing, but observing himself misusing himself and telling himself not to do that wasn't enough to make him stop doing it.
Sure. He didn't have the conscious control over it.
He didn't have control over it because it was habitual and it had become unconscious.
Right.
So that's what led him to create a technique where you can kind of unhinge some of these habits that we
unravel them,
get to the core of it, get to the bottom of it, and he was able to do it with the body because there are clear signs of good coordination. Like there's a clear relationship. He was able to discover the coordination between the neck, the head, and the torso, and how that influenced the rest of the body, and how that was often the first to leave in what they call the startle pattern. Like if we heard a gunshot right now, everybody would go like this.
Yeah,
sure.
So it's the neck, and how animals also use their neck and their head, and their torso as they just go about life in a graceful manner that they do.
Right.
So from these different.
Well, how many squirrels out there are traumatized and you don't think of squirrel problems as being like you carry life
bodies.
trauma. It's like you just got to collect nuts and
it's a whole different. And the book I'm reading a book now on that, which is basically on like where we've arrived from an evolutionary standpoint, to where we're able to influence our grace of movement and how and actually misuse ourselves and actually do things that hurt ourselves.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like. We've reached a certain level.
We're too self-aware.
Where it hasn't caught up to, being able to influence, consciously like our habits.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
we also evolved from the inside out, right? So you just mentioned the startle reflex, right?
Yes.
We're not in control of that. In fact, if you've ever gotten startled really properly, let's say the neighbors right next door set off a firework or something.
Yeah.
You feel your body react before your brain goes, that was a firework.
Body intelligence is a real thing. That's a real thing.
And depending on the sound and the direction it came from, your body will shield its main organs. Like it sort of makes an inward turn, guarding the, kidneys, liver, lungs, heart kind of area. and you just hope for the best, you know?
Yeah, it's deep. It's deep. Like you said, there's no control.
Yeah.
So Alexander technique is basically to shorten it up, long story short, it's a way that we can learn to influence consciously those mechanisms that control our psychophysical relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And and eventually learn to consciously inhibit those patterns from happening, right? You kind of find their root cause.
Yes. Well, the thing is also the good thing. One thing that I would like to mention is the in-person lesson aspect of it, because that's a big part of it. Because intellectualizing these ideas is very like,
it's like reading about how to ride a bicycle.
Yeah, you know,
like, good luck.
Yeah. So if somebody who's never been in balance can't read about proper balance and then put themselves in balance, necessarily, you know what I mean?
They need to be shown it and felt it.
Yeah. So this is so you get somebody who's been trained to find the balance in themselves, then they can put their hands on you and adjust you, you know, and bring you more towards proper use of your primary control, which is your head, neck, torso relationship. And kind of give you that kinesthetic snapshot of like, wow, this is what, like when the first lesson I ever had, I was playing, and she kind of lifted my teacher lifted my chest and adjusted my head and said, okay, I'm going to put my hand behind your head. I want you to leave your neck free when you inhale and exhale. And so your head does not touch the hand that I have in the back of your head. And my sound came out, and it was the easiest trumpet sound I had ever made, and it was huge compared to my normal sound. You know,
normally you probably felt like you're squeezing toothpaste out of a tube, instead of something flowing,
exactly. And so that snapshot right there was enough for me to say, wow, like, I'm not here all the time. Like I'm almost never here.
Yeah, this is novel right now, so I must not be there often.
Yes. So it kind of gives you I don't want to.
That's interesting. Yeah. You could probably say something about this whole body awareness thing. Like, what are you going through currently with your left arm on violin?
Yeah, never ending left arm thing. Yeah, I mean, not just with the left arm, but with generally about every muscle of my body, I think, generally. I would say
that's real though. That's a very Alexander. That's a very Alexander statement right there, because the unity of the body.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, the relationships of the muscle. Keep going.
And you're probably smart enough to have connected, like, oh, this muscle's a problem. Wait, but this one's connected to this one. Oh, wait.
I mean, that's a never-ending cycle. Like, I lose my mind trying to like microanalyze every single muscle and every motion that I'm doing in life, which is probably against what like Alexander technique is like, you know, kind of going for. But I mean, I took Alexander technique lessons when I was so young, like I was 16, and I remember like it was just so interesting. I was like lying down in all of them. So I don't know if there's
the lie downs.
Yeah, the lie downs. Like take a deep breath and then just like do something with the head. Like I was just so young to appreciate it, but I remember like everything was just feeling just so perfectly the way it's supposed to be. It's like a really unique feeling that I never really experienced since then, I guess.
You could always come back.
Yeah, I guess so. But I'm also curious. Is it a cult? I'm also curious. I tried Feldenkrais since then, which is kind of similar. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I'm not. I've heard about it, but I honestly don't know much about it.
I see.
Maybe you could tell me.
They were very like similar. I think there was no education of posture on Feldenkrais. It's more like the exercises are usually, I don't know, like lying down. Like there are sitting down exercises as well, but like nothing focusing on your posture. But I was just curious how Alexander technique is different than that. Is it just postural education? Or?
Well, it's not really posture. Like I might have said posture because like I said, the language is tough sometimes to, like I was literally just talking to a bunch of Alexander teachers who are like old. They've been teaching for 20 years, something, when I got the scholarship. And
oh, so I don't think we said you're going to start official training. This year?
Yeah, September,
Yeah.
So I'm very excited.
That's how many years?
3 years.
3 years.
1,600 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
Damn, that would be cool though.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
That's a great thing to include on a music resume.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not only will it be great for you personally, like to get the training, even if you never use it as a resume item.
For sure.
But I feel like that's going to be dope to like get the official.
Yeah, man. I'm just looking forward to it because I know I have a lot of like unraveling to do. and now I have an excuse to really focus on unraveling it,
Right.
which I won't be feeling like you should be doing this or doing that or doing this. I'm like, no, I have to do this.
Your higher self is like, force yourself by taking this certification to do it.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you might just watch Dark
never
on
do
Netflix.
Yo, I have to watch
5
that
hours
show.
in a row.
Amazing.
It's good?
Yeah.
My friend literally
Incredible.
just texted me and told me to watch it, like on my way here.
You should watch.
Let's not get into Dark.
I
Okay.
can't
but,
sleep at night. It's like
Is that
trying to like
crazy?
just film that in my head. Like,
Oh, man.
Yeah,
crazy.
we've had to like before bed we finish Dark and we watch something random
I always have
so
to
that
watch
our
a
brains
curb.
forget it or something.
I always have to watch a curb after like
Yeah.
I was watching Game of Thrones with somebody who had never watched it.
Okay.
And we watched all the way through it, but it was like afterwards I always had to watch a curb like right after.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because I'm just too like just
You'll
need a
have
palate
like
cleanser.
Carl Jung level dreams of these psychological concepts of like
It's time travel,
what is
right?
good, what is evil, and
Oh, I'm ready for that. I'm
it's
ready for
time
that.
travel. It's philosophy of like, what would it mean to say there is no truth? That's a truth claim.
That's the truth.
And then by claiming anything is how you bring truth into the world. It's that kind of philosophical.
All right, yeah, put a pin in that one.
Yeah. Let's bubble that up before it
Put a
opens
pin
up.
in that one. Yeah, put a pin in that one.
So what's for Alexander technique? What's the main thing you've noticed from your own body and playing? Was it just that neck thing were you saying with the breathing, or was there any other?
Well,
For me, shoulder is where my
Shoulder.
trumpet tension manifests,
Yeah.
and I have to consciously make a mental note as I practice. Okay, right shoulder, relax, relax, and she'll notice. Yanka will come into the room and just touch the muscle, not even like go, oh, it's tight, just touch it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize
Awareness.
I was holding that much tension there.
I actually would say that that's honestly, you just kind of alluded to it, is the increase in awareness, of bodily awareness. Like, I'm learning, it would be hard to pick one thing because it's the sensory input is like so much right now because I'm learning how I'm doing things and how I do things, how I make things harder than
You're
they
being
need to.
flooded with too much information
It's a lot of
right now. Yeah.
information. Yeah, it's a lot of information. But generally, the increase of awareness has been huge because a lot of the times we don't realize that our bodies, oftentimes when we're in states of overwhelm or, dealing with whatever we're dealing with psychologically in the back of our minds, we've vacated awareness from different parts of our body. In Alexander technique, there's a principle that's called unreliable sensory appreciation. It basically means, in layman's terms, that you become so comfortable in an uncomfortable situation that has become comfortable. You get what I'm saying?
That's just how our psychology works.
So
right?
so that's really what that really is a lack of awareness. So, for instance, walking is a huge thing because I try to walk every day for at least an hour. And right before all this stuff happened with the virus, I was getting my last Alexander lesson, which was March 10th or 11th or something like that.
When you were like, oh, what's this coronavirus thing in the news?
Yeah, I'm in Manhattan,
chilling,
just hanging out, and
not thinking about like when you touch the handle to open the Starbucks door,
you know
like
what I
that
mean?
matters.
That could kill me immediately. Yeah, not even thinking about it. But so kind of passing, I said to my teacher, so I've been taking walks. I think I'm gonna try to continue walking on a daily basis just for my health and my sanity. Is there anything I should be thinking about while I walk? And she said, yeah, let me see you walk. So I walked. So I just walked around the apartment, and she was like, "You're picking your foot up too fast before if this." I'm sure they can't see me, but you guys can see me.
I'm totally sure they can't see you.
What'd you put in this one? Before there should be like a contact on the heel, and you should pretty much roll through your entire foot and pushing off with your big toe is the instruction I was given. So what I was doing was before my big toe was really able to come in contact, I was lifting my foot. Okay. Kind of like rushing or hurry in a kind of a hurried fashion. Yeah. So at the time when she was telling me to do that, then she had me do, because I couldn't really get it. Sometimes you don't get it right away because you've been doing things for so long.
You hear the words, but you're not going to change your body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So she had me do an exercise where I literally just drag my foot to feel my toes coming in contact with the ground, to get that kind of feeling of my toes coming in contact with the ground. So it still didn't really do much. A couple of days later, I'm walking, And I'm just, doing my thing. I'm walking, and I'm thinking, okay, let's look at my walking. Let's put my awareness on my feet right now.
Mm-hmm.
That I probably never did that in my life because I never had a reason to. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? I've been walking since I could walk.
Yeah.
Like, why? I know how to walk,
Unless there's a crack in the sidewalk, you're pretty
Yeah,
damn good at
I'm
it.
not even thinking about it.
Mhm.
But I said, let me put my awareness in my feet. And I said, okay, she was kind of right. My feet aren't all my feet aren't contacting the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't feel very relaxed. Like, I feel like I'm somewhat tense.
Almost like
Mhm.
like
Almost,
crawling, like
yeah, like there's not really like the flexibility of
Mhm.
my foot, like actually like pushing off the ground, like the ground supporting me pushing myself off the
Mhm.
ground. It's like being in a chair and feeling like, sometimes we feel like we're holding ourselves up on a chair. Sometimes we feel
Instead
like
of
the chair is
letting the
supporting.
chair, sure.
Exactly. So I thought to myself, okay, let me relax my feet. Can I relax? Can my feet be 10% more relaxed? Or I might have thought something, 5%.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately just putting my awareness on my feet, like, it totally changed the way my feet totally relaxed. I realized my feet were very unrelaxed
Sure.
actually. And it totally changed the sensation of walking. It was like it was a different,
Yeah.
and not only did my feet change, but that changed the way my legs felt and my hips, my pelvis, and my arms started to sway like much more naturally. It was like a shock wave, it was like a
Yeah.
positive wave through my entire body. And it was like, wow, this is a whole different scenario that I never would have even
It's
thought
like
that I
once
would
you
be
paid
uncomfortable.
attention to it, you put a spotlight on it and you
Exactly.
can heal the problems there. But like you never otherwise put a spotlight there because it's walking. Who the hell
The awareness
needs to
isn't
think
there.
about walking?
Yeah, if you're not able to have the awareness, how could you ever know if what you're doing is, the most
Right.
the
It's
best
that
way for you to
mindful
do it?
awareness too,
The
right? It's
mindful
not just
awareness.
any awareness. It's
Yeah.
not like, oh, my feet hurt from walking all day. Oh, like
Yeah, it's like
It's
working
like-
with yourself. It's like,
yeah.
am I relaxed as I could be? Is that, and something might not have happened when that happened, because sometimes I do that and I just realized, oh wow, I'm playing trumpet right now. I have literally a death grip on the trumpet. I'm in the middle of a gig or something, and I'm like, wow, my hand is like glued to the trumpet. Can I stop it? No. Like,
Right.
but at least I'm aware. Like,
Yeah, the grip on the trumpet can be crazy.
man, it hurts. But yeah, that's another thing I'm working on now. I'm just working, but
I remember during playing Trumpet Shall Sound one solo, which is a really long, what would you say, a page and a quarter with a repeat, so almost like
yeah,
2.5 pages.
no man's land.
It's
no
it's
man's
crazy.
land.
It's so long. You're almost guaranteed to get tired. It's just a matter of if you will die or not.
You got to
know?
stay calm though. You got to stay calm the whole time.
But sometimes, and luckily these have always been in rehearsals where the music stops anyways to fix something.
Mm.
But I notice like my knuckle, this is on Baroque trumpet, so my third knuckle on my left hand is like about ready to burst. Like it's insane pain
Grasping.
because I was grabbing the ball of the trumpet, the corpus,
Yeah.
so hard. I'm like, what am I doing? I was just trying to fight with handle and be like,
Yeah.
I got this. Luckily, they stopped the music because then if you try to fight like that for more than a minute, you hit full fatigue anyways.
It's over. Yeah. It's over.
So interesting how that works. And you're finding the same thing on violin, right? Like with your left hand stuff, Yanka's been like
A lot of
coming out
stories.
of the practice room, aka some room in our apartment, including maybe the bathroom if we're both
usually
practicing.
bathroom. Yeah.
She'll come out and be like, I figured it out. It's just this muscle is doing this and this one's not, balancing or something.
I'm
I'm like,
becoming
all right.
chubby, basically about the muscles situation. Yeah, I'm trying to. Like, I realized that I mean, it's a long story, but I have been just using the wrong muscles to do certain motions. And I've been doing that for so long that like when I feel like
muscle recruitment is like so sharp.
Yeah.
That's what my teacher says to me. Cause right now I'm working, not to cut you off, but I'm working with a similar habit of mine where I have kind of some tension in here in my, in the center of my chest that affects that's on my exhale.
Mm-hmm.
Like right before I exhale, I brace a little bit, especially if I'm about to play something hard or high or anything like that.
Isn't that the trumpet player bad habit?
Yeah, I brace, and it's like a down contraction basically.
Yeah.
That if I'm feeling a certain type of way, that will happen, and it would happen quick. And I was doing it in my lesson, and she says, "Wow, you're good at that." So meaning like
Oh, interesting.
at a time, it's kind of like we do things. We create habits because at one point
They served us.
it was successful.
Yeah.
At one point, that got me through whatever I was, maybe a couple times. So maybe a couple times those muscles. But now when it's time to take it away and try to reevaluate,
That's quite interesting. I think I'm trying to piece that together in my brain.
It must be so hard to work with breath, though. Like, that's not something, like, your diaphragm is not the type of muscle that you can physically control. You know what I mean? Like, I can, like, look at my muscles and then figure out on my arm. Like, but the diaphragm must be so hard.
It's more internal and less visual. It's really hard to teach.
Conceptually, it's for me, I'm taking actually a workshop right now on breathing. It's called Breathe Easier. At the Riverside Initiative for Alexander Technique.
I'm taking the course Breathe Harder. It's right across the street. It's a Wim Hof method.
Literally, I was taking this class. I was like, wow, Wim Hof probably wouldn't like this class.
Yeah. I'd like to see him sit down and be like, this is bullshit. Everyone come in. Breathe in.
Breathe. It's like a wave. But I'm also realizing like you said, it's very, you can't see what's going on. Like, they give us a lot of diagrams, which are very helpful, but a lot of the times it's like music. Sometimes it's much easier sometimes to learn conceptually or to learn like with an abstract metaphor. Somebody says like play bouncier, like kind of know what that, you know what I mean? Like it gets you where you need to go.
What are they going to say? Literally what to do with
literally
your lip
like
muscles
put your, literally like move your
Yeah.
wrist like this,
Yeah.
But play bouncier, play.
You know how your tongue is going just below the bottom tip of your teeth? Adjust that position slightly high. It's like, all right,
exactly.
you lost me.
Yeah,
Just
that's why
tell me
it's
bouncier.
so unbelievable to watch you teaching, for instance. It's such a different type of teaching. Like, I overhear you, like this whole quarantine, the way you teach. It's almost like you're trying to teach something that's not there. Like, everybody's different. How do you teach trumpet or like
I
any
always
brass
do that
instrument?
with beginning students. I
Like,
go, where are the
impossible.
notes? And they
Yeah.
point to the valves on the trumpet. I'm like,
Yeah.
those are buttons. Where are the notes?
Yeah.
And like, I'll show them like a piano and be like, here's a note, right? Here's a note. Where are our notes? And they're like, I guess I don't know.
Is that what you prefer in lessons when somebody teaches you? Like conceptual teaching, or I mean, I guess it depends on what it is, on what you're working on. Of course.
I think it depends on. I prefer that though. I want to I want somebody to take me on a journey from like first principles, kind of show me like you'll fill in all these details along the way, and here's where you'll get, and then I can trust them as a teacher and go, I trust the where I'll get part.
Yeah,
and then I trust that if I do the work you set out for me, that I will trace myself through those details. So
through the more technical aspects.
So I like to start with the scaffolding first so that I can hang the information on something in my mind, like a concept, instead of just
concepts.
I mean, but there are benefits of diving into the chaos of, let's say, Alexander technique or meditation or whatever, and then seeing what you build on your own to try and organize it.
Yeah.
You just have to live with a lot more difficult beginning stage.
Yeah, it's interesting. People learn differently, like I have had students where I have to literally tell them like, okay, when you do that, you're putting your hands, you're crunching, it's cutting off the air. No matter what I tell them, play like a feather. No matter what I tell them, they're still crunching.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they're still like, their tongue is too hard, whatever. So there's some people who learn like that, but there's some people who are having those same physical issues, but then I could just say, relax, play lighter, play bouncier. And then I play, then they hear it and they say, okay, then they see me, they feel what I just did.
Yeah.
And they're able to replicate that. I think that's just like a skill that some people have, that some people just learn
certainly
differently.
in music. I think we're all built with like the learning.
Is it the same with
module.
violin?
I mean, we teach so much more physically. I think like we just hands-on a lot. So there are a lot of, there's so much stuff.
There we go. See?
Okay.
There's your rich Yanka voice.
There's so much stuff, that physical stuff that you can actually intervene.
Gotcha.
So I've never, I think violin teaching is not abstract at all at first.
Gotcha.
That's why, remember you were like,
when I first
just
heard your
telling
lesson.
me, do you always
Yeah,
teach this technically? Like, I'm like, yeah, what do you mean?
She was like, your pinky here, this. I was like, whoa.
Piano's like that. When I used to get
works.
piano lessons, that was very, also I got taught by a somewhat angry Ukrainian concert organist.
That's got its own
Beautiful combo.
special flavor to it.
She was
I actually
great, though.
took
She was
over a
great,
student
but-
from an angry, I think, Ukrainian teacher that made the student cry.
Yeah.
And
I loved her though. She was so happy. when I didn't make a mistake.
Well, that's real love, right?
She would literally bang on the piano like I would miss it. It's a G. She would bang on the piano.
Oh my God.
Russian method is successful. My teacher,
Depends
teacher,
how you define success.
she would throw books at my face. It was really nice. Here I am.
Well,
Look at me today.
With all your muscle tension
All
and
my-
violent
yeah,
skills.
all my messed up
They come as
injuries.
a package, right?
It's interesting though, like how different personalities cope with different teaching with like, for instance, like I was taught by, different teachers. I'm sure we all were. My current teacher, very much more hands off than the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
The previous one, very tough, very, goal oriented. Like this needs to be done. We're coming for a lesson. This needs to be done.
Right.
You know what I mean? If it's not done,
There's no,
gonna
I
have
kind of decided to work on this instead.
no, there's not
yeah.
none of that.
Okay.
None of that. So that honestly, and I'm not to blame because it's every person reacts differently. It's why you can have, kids in the same home reacting to parenting in totally different ways. But the way I dealt with that was to do all the things. So like to not fold, quote unquote, but that created so much tension. So I wouldn't fold. It was almost like I was bracing myself to not fold, like under the pressure, under the, you know what I mean? And then when I get to my current teacher, he's like, it's all up to you. I'm like, I'm built for a whole different sport right now, almost.
Are you talking about Kevin?
Yeah, I'm talking about Kevin.
So
yeah.
one of the things, Kevin Cobb, one of the things I loved about his teaching is like in the trumpet world, there's such a problem of gripping too hard, psychologically speaking,
Yes.
to your playing, to your ego, to your all that stuff. And his teaching approach, like indirectly, sort of gets you to detach from caring about those things and just sort of like
just play.
In a way, like he kind of tries to figure out the person's personality and then help them sort of let go of their own ego problems or whatever.
Definitely.
So that because his idea would be, and I think this is mine too, and as far as I can tell, if you can free up your mind, the body goes with it. And like all my auditions when I was like 19, 20, 21, 22, like I would show up and I did not know what the word mindfulness was. I was almost just like, oh, it's a flip of a coin if I'll get nervous, like in
no
a
control,
debilitating kind of way.
Yeah, that's too real, man.
So yeah, I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Well, let's get into the last little segment here, which would be like music, meaning, mindfulness, and like how to piece together being a musician with the mindfulness stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
I found this quote today. I'm just going to read it real quick to sort of get us going. This is called Music, Mind, and Meaning. So
nice. Somebody stole my idea.
Somebody's close to stealing your idea. You better get on it fast.
Somebody almost got me.
I almost pitched the idea actually as a course at this place I teach. They do like adult courses for art and stuff, and they don't have any for music that isn't like learning drums or something. So I was like, oh, can I teach a music appreciation class for adults, like, and just talk about music, meaning, and mindfulness?
Yeah, that'll be dope, man.
Connect all the dots, and then
yeah,
COVID happened, and I pitched the idea, and then they were like, "What?" And I was like, "I'll send you a detailed email, and it'll make more sense than whatever I just rambled at you, like in the hallway." But
yeah, that would be cool. That would definitely be cool for adults.
I think it would be not work for kids and be perfect for adults who aren't even musicians, but just want to connect deep dots and then be able to watch and listen to a Mahler symphony and like sort of spiritually heal as part of that, instead of just being like, oh, the music was lovely, you know?
Yeah.
Like you can learn how to connect more deeply to it without being a musician, I think.
Definitely.
So anyways, this quote from this little essay was, why do we like music? We are all reluctant with regard to music and art to examine our sources of pleasure or strength. In part, we fear success itself. We fear that understanding might spoil enjoyment. Rightly so, art often loses power when its psychological roots are exposed. No matter, when this happens, we will go on, as always, to seek more robust illusions. So it's like this idea of
the mystery.
The mystery.
Being infatuated with the mystery of it all.
And will there always be further mystery? So anyways, where do you think the idea of the word meaning, however you define that, enters into the, like, how does music have meaning? That's
a loaded question.
That's a loaded question. I'm
a loaded
sorry.
question for sure. But
I'm gonna tee it off to you, and we could just talk about it.
Yeah,
you don't have to have an answer.
I'll riff on it. Music and meaning. Clearly, like, music has, it's a byproduct of humanity. Like, wherever there are humans, civilization, music has been present from what we can see.
Yeah.
You know, in our present day, music is such a part of our everyday lives. You know, with our consumption of media, we're often like bombarded with music. Sometimes before we even realize it, like, there's a commercial, you're like, what's
Yeah,
you
the
kind
jingle
of, yeah, you kind of remember the song before you even know what the commercial was about.
works
You
on
know
your
what I mean?
subconscious.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. And so for me, meaning has such a large array of music has such a large array of applications.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But personally, when I think about music and mindfulness, I think of more about communication, and I think about expression, and I think about, believe it or not, a canonization of things that a canonization of ideals that we want to promote. Right?
Patterns.
Wynton Marsalis said that
he gets deep about music.
Yeah, he gets deep. Yeah. Wynton Marsalis says that music currently has become kind of the myth has taken the place in many ways as the myth of an age, of different ages. And in the myths, you kind of encapsulate what it is that you want to preserve.
Sure.
You get what I'm saying?
You preserve it in a form that's not
through the art, you know,
obvious and literal, right?
Yes, it actually affects the thing from the top down, from throughout the entire structure of it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. What is a Mahler symphony?
What is that?
What myth is that? Putting as its structure, it's something like the hero myth, right?
Yeah. And you can get deep when you talk about thematic development. You can get deep with that. You know what I mean? Like thematic development, the use of, you know, musical quotation. Like you can get really deep. Like you can get very deep. But even like if you take it down a scale, you know what I mean? And you think of something like, I've been recently thinking a lot about gospel. Mm-hmm. And even though it's much more simple, right, than a Mahler symphony, like a gospel structure or a blues structure.
Sure, you could write a shorter paper to get the full understanding.
Yeah, to be able to play it or whatever, or to be able to like intellectualize what somebody's doing when they play it. Sure. It doesn't mean that you can play it, but you can intellectualize what's happening when they play it. But it's getting across a very profound, like the profundity of it is not affected. Like from a Mahler, like you can get the same level of experience in the right listener. You know what I mean? So I literally just said what came to my mind right after that quote. But expression, communication, expression. The ability to communicate with another, the ability to communicate my expression to somebody else. Yeah. And for them to have the ability to interpret that, and to make it relevant in their life. You know what I mean?
And it's always, I love the idea that communication of any kind is always an act of translation.
Yes.
Even when we're speaking the same English.
Yes.
Even when we're both trumpet players hearing the same music, the subjective experience I have, or you should say that I create, because when you hear something, you don't just hear it. You're not a receiver.
Yes.
You're not a radio receiver of sound. You're actually a creator of sound.
Yes.
It's the raw data plus your pre-interpretive structure of what to expect.
Yes.
You know, if you heard the best trumpet player in the world, it would take you a longer time to be like, I think this actually sucks. You know, like you're going to imprint on like it's like the bias of like, this is supposed to be the best sound in the world or something.
Yeah.
We always bias our input data with our pre-loaded pattern
Just being
formations
a
and
human.
stuff.
Yeah,
But of course, that's also how music works, right?
definitely.
I have this experience often. There we go, the fairy, C sharp. The fairy always does a C sharp.
You get an A+.
Yeah.
A+ for oral skills.
For me, like have you ever heard Jordan Peterson talk about music?
Yeah, he has a good. I like his his spiel on music. It's nice.
I've heard it a few times in different contexts. One that I saw recently, he was talking to the psychologist Iain McGilchrist.
Okay.
He's this British guy who wrote a book called The Master and His Emissary. And the idea is the two hemispheres of your brain, one being the master in this myth where the master sees the big picture, knows all, but has trouble getting things done and doing the details, right? It's a big picture kind of guy.
Yeah.
The emissary is the person that listens to the master and goes off and does the tasks that, get this done, and the emissary goes and figures it out. There's a whole myth there, but the idea is your right hemisphere is the big picture, see the forest, and your left hemisphere is the detail-oriented, see the trees.
Yeah.
And the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere sort of play this tension game, inhibiting each other. They both see the world with their very different viewpoints, and in the balance is where you exist as an ideal human. One foot in chaos, the right hemisphere, one foot in order, the left hemisphere. And then he was describing how that our bodies, down to that lobster level of neurochemistry, are wired to feel meaning when you are properly balanced in that balance between right and left, being open to new things, following your rule system, chaos,
there's
order.
a sweet spot.
There's a sweet spot. And that music is meaningful to us because imagine if you just heard a Mozart symphony where you're given a theme and then it just ends. You would be like, nothing happened, right? What happens though is we get given a theme, we get given a counter idea, and then we hear them play out. They develop by going out in the world, so to speak, and seeing, oh, this idea I had, does it hold up to scrutiny? And then they transform along the development and come back in the recapitulation at the end of the movement as themes that they have everything they previously had plus the new things, right?
Yeah.
They're transformed into something more robust and better. And then we hear that as the hero's journey, right?
Yeah, it's a very narrative. It's a very
on
narrative.
Such a low level of psychology, though.
Structure. Yeah, yeah. Winston talks about that too. How music, specifically with the developmental section, has certain psychological value. Which I agree with. I would agree with that for sure. And I think that's one of the listening to classical music. I think that's one of the most enriching things about it. If you're able to. It's also meant to be consumed a lot of times, so you don't have to. You go back and listen to it a bunch of times. So you can understand what's happening. It's a certain level of investment, also.
You have to invest in actually hearing it with the kind of focus that is needed. You have to invest in multiple listenings.
Yeah,
Mahler 5 didn't make sense to me. Mahler's Fifth Symphony until I don't know number 6, 7, 8. First time I heard it, I was like, those chorale parts were really nice. What was with all the other stuff? It didn't hit me with meaning. And now I hear it, I'm like, oh God, Mahler was suffering. I can hear it,
It's painful, man.
Yeah, it's painful to invest in it.
I think the way you're introduced into music, it also really affects your hearing experience. Because you've mentioned that you grew up in a musical family, you heard gospels, which is such a nice way of having that as your base thing, you know what I mean?
The non-Russian teacher.
I grew up in a conservatory system. It was just very technical
totally
from the beginning. So that's how I got used to hearing music, and it was just so hard to tune out from that. And in that way, I really don't appreciate that.
I mean, it's hard to hear music without that technical part of your mind being
you can't really turn that off after a while, and then everything becomes too mechanical, the process in your brain, the way you perceive. Obviously, what do you listen to just chill out? Do you have anything you listen to just relax? Yeah. Heavy metal. Yeah.
Yeah,
Really?
no, you have great
dope.
musical taste. Like every time
not
you
heavy
put
metal,
something
like
on in the
prog
car,
metal,
I'm like,
prog
oh,
rock.
did you
Yeah.
save that? I want to get into that. Like,
Yeah. I'm talking about like other genres. I've never had any problem, but with classical music, I
because
never.
you didn't
was
go to
able
metal conservatory.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
The little bit of space, the
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
I think they really like that system of education really created a space and barrier in between, like how
I'm
you.
sure you
hear
could
the
knock
music.
that barrier down.
Oh, I already did. I'm just
Yeah.
saying it's a hard time. I think it's more
Yeah.
unnatural, like more natural to a person who grew up without that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd
Yeah.
agree with that.
It's certainly in
Yeah.
terms of just
I mean, for me, I love band. Like that's really what
Yeah.
got me into classical music because I didn't know anything about orchestras growing up when I was a kid.
you're like trumpet in the orchestra. What the
Yeah.
heck's that?
Like literally, like I went to orchestra. Like my high school had an orchestra, but they would bring the trumpets in because all the trumpets were in band.
Uh-huh.
So they would bring us in like
For the Hallelujah chorus or something.
yeah, they would bring us in like right before the performance or like a couple weeks before the performance and just give us the music and we would just
Oh,
play,
okay. Yeah.
But in band we were playing like Copeland
Yeah.
and like Granger and
Percy
like
Granger. Yeah.
yeah, the whole
Dang.
suites. All
I haven't
that type
played
of
in
stuff.
band in so long.
Yeah, man. And then when I went to, so that kind of gave me band is it's kind of like a sport. It's like,
Yeah.
there's really no.
It's not when you compare like band music to Mahler, it's hard to take it as seriously, and I don't know why. I won't sit here and say I've analyzed Percy Granger and the complexity is nowhere near
Well, it
that of
depends.
it's just it doesn't hit me as serious music
Yeah.
as much. I don't know why.
Sometimes. Well, what's your band? What is your band like?
I've never been in a
Relationship.
dope band. I
Okay,
played
see that's it right
Yeah.
there. That's it right there. Yeah, yeah.
as soon as I could switch from like band being a requirement to orchestra, I did it right
you
away.
did it. Yeah, I feel you. When I went to get my master's, well, in my undergrad too, in Buffalo, my band director had a thing for. He didn't care like if we weren't Eastman, if we weren't this or that. We always played like extremely high level music, like on
Mhm.
purpose. So we played like, old things like the Granger, but we also played, the new composers because band is mostly like
Yeah.
it's mostly like newer composers. You know,
Which
what I
is
mean?
one of the great things about it.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. And when I went to my master's, I had an amazing band director named Dennis Glocky,
Hmm.
who amazing. He was an amazing conductor. So like he was an amazing conductor, and he picked amazing stuff. And I took his class on, wind band literature.
Mhm.
So I have a little bit more
You
of
got
like
the full experience.
yeah, like I
of-
dove head first into
Yeah.
band music, into like wind ensemble.
Oh, I'm sure if I were in that
Yeah, you
situation,
would love
I'd
it,
come
man.
out
Yeah, yeah.
and be like, "Yo, band music's."
I just had access to a guy.
Amazing.
Yeah, I just
Yeah.
had access to a guy who was, so enthusiastic.
Yeah,
But I'm sure. Like now, I realize that that's not usually the case. I was kind of fortunate in that regard.
it is a good thing. Yeah, I mean, I really think I'm 30 now. I think the last time I played in a band might have been when I was 17
Mm.
or 18.
They're not really around. They're not really around.
Well,
People
the
aren't really
ones
going
that
to see
are like the lame community bands where it's more like watching an episode of The Office than
Yeah.
than being in a musical
them.
situation.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah,
But it's also, it's a different type of pressure when you got 12 trumpets
yeah.
and they're yelling at you about intonation.
Yeah.
That's a little bit. That's a certain kind of pressure.
The
right
skill
there.
set is way different.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that's a certain kind of pressure right there, man. Where there's not really. Those
that's what I
rhythm
mean. I've
rests.
never been in a good enough band where I'm ever like, yeah, these other people are really listening. It was like
Mhm.
I was in a decent band in high school, like that was, you had to audition for it, and it was like people from different high schools on the whole Long Island like coming together. But even then, it was the whole ego thing of like every trumpet player was like, I wonder if my sound can stick out of the
I
group.
wonder if I could blast. Yeah, I wonder
Gross.
who I could
Yeah.
I would
blast.
have that. I mean,
Trumpet
that I
players
just
would have
love.
that.
That's true.
I was just talking to a student today about like the whole trumpet ego problem, and I was saying like there must be a selection pressure for trumpet players that selects for really confident people who don't question things and just kind of like are meatheads, like I just got to play the notes that are there, boom, boom, boom. And that's why the more reflective trumpet players have to like go through this whole ordeal of like sorting out their mind,
Yeah,
because it's really hard to be self-aware and successful at trumpet. You have
Yeah.
to like sort out a lot of
a
problems.
lot of stuff. Yeah,
It's a lot easier to have the lights off and just be like, and just play perfectly.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
But
yeah,
certainly wouldn't be the meaningful version of music, I guess.
So can I ask you a question, Yanka?
Mm-hmm.
So I was really interested in what you said about growing up with the conservatory mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you deal with, and you just give me the best answer you can deal with, you can, but how did you deal with things like competition pressure, things like dealing with issues of self-identifying with your mistakes or lack of mistakes when you play? Because that's something, as I'm getting information for this, music meaning and mindfulness, this is the type of thing that I really want to deal with on the classical side. Is
you mean for musicians? For
musicians on the classical side, is how is the relationship between your self-worth and or even like the worth of or even the worth of yourself engaging in music. Because like, how often do we get to the point where it's like, man, I messed up so many times, like, should I even be doing this? Like, why am I doing this? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten there a bunch of times. So, but I feel like if I grew up in a conservatory, I wouldn't even be here right now probably playing. Like,
right, you may have just left it long ago.
Yeah, I might have just left, like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? But
totally.
Can you speak on that?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. So I mean, I have quit almost so many times. Like, I remember 2 very major moments in my life where I'm like, I'm just not going to do this anymore. And one of them, like, I was really old, but I mean, I think I'm still learning how to deal with it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
so
I don't think anything that works like a mind, like things that anything you've learned to help you with that, or does meditation help you with that?
Absolutely. I was just getting that. I think like self-awareness comes with like questioning your self-worth constantly. That's the downside. So that meditation definitely helped me.
Gotcha.
I incorporated it like way later in my life. But what else helped me? Like, you, after a while, start rolling with punches. That was the idiom, right?
Yeah.
Like, basically,
perseverance. You get some perseverance, some toughness.
Like, what started happening to me is
thicker
like
skin. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. I was like so uncomfortable about so many situations, but then I started putting myself in those situations on purpose. Like, it can be an audition, a performance where you feel extremely super uncomfortable. I just like kept purposefully doing that torture to myself, and then it started getting better.
You get over it, right?
Yeah.
You don't get over it ever. I don't think so. But
I think the body
easier.
adapts, like when you do the same activity.
Or maybe you don't get over it, but maybe like you realize I'm not dead. Like, I'm still here.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah, it gets easier to handle.
The scary object in the dark is much scarier in your mind than when you turn the light on and see that it's the tree shadow from outside or whatever it is.
It's not the boogeyman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not certainly not the boogeyman.
Yeah.
It might be a tiger in your house, but like whatever. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's something I'm looking. I was actually gearing up to try to get on my audition game and then COVID happened.
Yeah.
So
well, that's one of the hard parts of COVID, man. It's like it's hard for musicians to look into the future right now and know like what's my plan. A large part of like psychological stability comes from aiming at different time scales.
Yeah.
Do you know what you're going to do later today? Next week, next month,
a year from now.
Yeah.
And you're constantly setting yourself up to not be fucked at any one of those stages.
Facts. That's a fact.
If you're going to be fucked by tonight, like, maybe rent's due because the no rent period is about to end. Like
the moratorium.
The moratorium, yeah. So I think for musicians, because there's no auditions and it's unclear what's happening with concerts and it's really weird psychologically.
Also, on top of that, man, just on a even more like baseline level, I realized when I don't play with people, my playing goes down. My playing turns into shit.
Oh yeah,
that's the thing.
Like what? Like if I don't have people, if I don't have that little bit of pressure of people being around when I play, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of me like, okay, I know I got 3 rehearsals this week. It's Sunday. Let me get the horn on the face. You know what I mean? Let me make sure my articulation is what is.
Yeah.
Let me make sure my slurs and my air.
I mean, at this age, it's impossible to keep up with practicing if you don't have anything coming up.
Nothing's coming up.
Nothing.
So I just started. Honestly, I bought my trumpet. We don't even have to play. I just started bringing my trumpet
Everywhere.
wherever I go. And I told I've been hanging out with Ryan. I told him, if you come to my place, bring your tuba, man.
Yeah.
I don't care if we play like 3 notes. I just need to play around another human being
Right.
that hears what, even if I sound hard, like I just need to like play, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that goes away,
Well, all of a sudden you might find yourself nervous the next time you play.
That's
and you're
exactly
like,
what I'm saying.
I don't want that.
That's exactly
I
what
already
I'm saying.
dealt with that.
Yo,
I got over it.
that's that's exactly it. Like just the nervousness of like,
Yeah.
of
being judged.
yeah, like the right before the cold shower feeling, like when you're like,
Yeah.
you know what
Yeah.
I mean?
The we were saying this just the episode right before this one. There's a book called The Flinch. Talking about the moment. I mean, it's kind of similar to what you were saying with the startle reflex, right?
Yeah.
But the flinch is like the moment right before you flip the water to cold, or right before you do anything will make you uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you just imagine sending in the application to take an audition, you'll feel like an essence of a flinch in your nervous system of like being scared of that thing.
Yeah.
And so this book is all about like learn to become mindful and notice the flinch, and then definitely do that thing.
That sounds like a good book. Man. Text me that, man.
It is. I found a free PDF of it online.
Yeah.
I mean, buy it on Amazon through our affiliate link. We'll set that up.
I'll definitely buy that. I'll definitely buy that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So the other aspect of the music and meaning thing was just the layers to it. So like when Peterson talks about that instinct of meaning that our nervous systems have, when you're listening to music and you feel the chills go up your spine and through your body.
Yes.
Maybe the end of Mahler's Second Symphony or any Mahler symphony sometimes. Yeah. In fact, what was I reading today? I forget the name of the blog. It's a really popular blog, but it was talking about a Viktor Frankl quote where he said, have you ever been to a classical music concert, your favorite symphony, and you get that feeling of chills running up your spine? He goes, are you really asking me if life has meaning? Yeah,
that's real.
I mean, that is the meaning itself.
Yeah, certain things just hit you, man. Certain things just hit you. And I get that feeling probably because of my upbringing. Mm-hmm. But like, that's the feeling that when the music is right to me, like that's what I get. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's the
alignment.
It's the feeling that I get. That's like when I was like, not to be cliche, but when I was a little kid and I heard the chord on the organ or something, and I was like, yeah, music, yeah. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't know anything about music. Like, I'd never touched a musical instrument, but like something just said like music is right. Yeah. Like it just hit me like in my soul, like for lack of better terms, like it just hit me in my soul.
Well, I think that's what it does.
Yeah.
That's the word soul is our stand-in mouth sound for something in our experience
our intangible part. Yeah. Our intangible. Transcendent. That's the word right there. Yeah. And I get that, man. I get that. It's funny. The thing is with me, it's so interesting with music because I get that feeling with so many different types of music. Mm-hmm. Like I get that feeling when I'm listening to somebody rap and they say something and it's just like, whoa, it just hits me. Like,
sure.
Or classical music or,
if they speak truth, right?
The truth. Or if I'm reading a book, you know what I mean? And this, you ever read a book, you ever read a book and then you read it and you're like, you don't need any citations. You don't need any, like if you read somebody who doesn't know you, a book was probably written like 50 years ago. But they speak specifically to what just happened to you.
Yeah. In a way that's like true on the large scale, but specifically perfect for...
Yes.
Sometimes I'll stand up from the couch. I'll be like...
Like they were narrating your life.
Oh, shit.
And now Luke stood up. Like,
yeah. It could have been the next sentence. Yeah. I love those because I usually sit with that one sentence for the rest of the day.
It hits you so hard.
Like really great writers have sentences that make you go, whoa, I'm going to unpack that for the next hour,
Yeah. And that's why honestly on Instagram, I'm taking a little break from Instagram just because I've been overdoing it with with social distancing.
Yeah.
But that's why I share.
Doing the same
that's
thing.
why I share so many things, and that's why I share like books or book quotes or like songs. I might share like the same song like 5 times in a row.
Right.
Because literally, anytime I get that feeling with like the chills or like it just hits me, like I just share it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just share it. And
do you get it less as you get older?
I purposely seek it out.
That's
Like I'm
nice.
I'm the type of person, I listen to a lot of things, and I'm like you guys, I'm trying to keep the intellect sharp, keep the ears sharp. So I'm just listening to different stuff all the time. So I feel like the chances of me getting hit with that are larger than maybe somebody who listens to the same stuff or reads the same stuff.
I think we have similar personalities. Like we sort of know, like, there's a higher wisdom, like, oh, you should seek that out.
You should go get it.
But there's another voice in my head that sometimes goes, fuck that. Like,
absolutely.
I'm going to put on, I have this like 7-day free 7-day ticket, like a voucher thing for the Berlin Philharmonic's online concert thing.
Nice.
And I've just been putting off like doing it because I know when I activate it, I'm going to feel the guilt to use it every
to
day.
enjoy it.
Yeah.
And then
creates so
sometimes
much
part
pressure.
of me like resists, like, I don't know if I want to watch a Mahler symphony tonight, even though the other part of me is like, you need that,
Yeah.
It's weird how that works, but when every time I actually do it, even if it's just listening to a movement of something,
Yeah. You kind of got to be right
I go,
for it though,
oh
also.
God.
You kind of got to be right for it also. You kind of get that feeling when you're like,
Oh,
it's like even food, like it's like food. It's like,
yeah, it's a Chinese food kind of night.
You kind of know what you want.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I had tacos. Yes.
Yeah.
Just listen to Mahler.
I just listened to Mahler. I'm really not looking to have Mahler for dinner again. No, I totally know what you mean. That's a good point. Yeah. So the meaning thing was basically like, I think music has these layers of meaning. It works on the measure scale, on the phrase scale, 8 measures, right? Or whatever it is. It works on the section scale, like dividing a sonata into the 3 parts. It works on the movement scale. It's like this grand representation of
Micro to
pattern
macro.
harmony,
Micro to macro.
Yeah. And I think we all, if we're musicians, we can articulate with more clarity, like, oh, this is the recapitulation of the sonata form in D major or whatever. But even somebody who doesn't know musical terms could also,
It still hits them.
it hits them, right?
Still hits them. Sometimes
They get the chills still.
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, if you think about it, classical music, it really isn't that it's not at its mainstream height as it used to be, but I'm sure when it was, all those people weren't musicians, you know, that were going to see it. And even now, everybody
People
going
flock
to see
to
it.
it.
Yeah, because it speaks to, like you said, it's not an intellectual.
Yeah.
It's not only an intellectual experience.
And when it is,
You know
it's
what I'm
usually
saying?
not good music.
Usually it's not.
It can be entertaining
Yeah, it could be
or
entertaining.
impressive.
Yeah, or impressive. But usually, what are you going to pay $100? You probably want to see. You probably want to have an experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You
probably
want that
wanna-
chill moment.
Yeah, and that's
It's
you
like
can't
a
think your way out
realignment
of
for
it.
your mind, like going to a chiropractor for your mind.
Yeah, you can't think your way into it or out of it. You kind of just have to like absorb. It's more of like an absorption.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Just in especially live music, there's a way that even up at Tanglewood, when we hear concerts on the lawn, so you're essentially hearing some of the sound from the real live instruments, but a lot of it from the speakers that projected to the lawn. It's still a beautiful experience. You're seeing the stars, and it feels like a live music experience. But compared to sitting inside and hearing the live instrument sounds, there's something about the vibrations that almost like it hits your body, not just your ears hearing the sound, but like you feel the energy in a visceral way.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's going to be a while since we'll hear until we'll hear a live orchestra.
You just made me think of drums, man. When I remember this last year, I saw Robert Glasper, jazz pianist.
Mm-hmm.
I saw his trio, and Chris Dave was playing drums, man. And it was like we weren't sitting that close. We were close enough, maybe like from here to living room or something. Mm-hmm. Kind of a small restaurant, but the impact of the drums, like, was just like the vibration off the drums alone was so impactful. It was so like moving. It was like
no speaker could have captured that.
No speaker. It was like Godzilla was like walking down, Manhattan. It was like Godzilla was in Manhattan knocking down buildings. It was like boom, boom. Like, it was just like.
But it wasn't Godzilla. It was COVID. Depending on the month, we were seeing Robert Glasper.
Facts.
I remember I sent an Instagram story of like this cute dog we were cuddling with, and you spotted Robert Glasper was on the Spotify on the background.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, oh shit, dude, Robert Glasper. Good eye.
Yeah, I love Robert Glasper, man. That's my guy.
Ready for some bonus questions?
Let's do it.
Round us off.
Let's do it.
Favorite book? What's the most influential book that you read?
That's a difficult one, man. That's a difficult one.
We're not gonna like audit you on this answer.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, don't.
If you tell me next week when we're hanging out, like, oh, I flubbed that book,
so I can
it's
change
all
my
right.
mind. So I can change my mind.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll still be friends.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, I remember I read this book called Ego and Archetype. This probably isn't my most influential, but it was very influential. I don't know what my most influential would be, but
That's
this
just
is
a hard question. Yeah.
But it was when I actually had my playing injury and I couldn't really play.
Mm-hmm.
And it's by this guy named Edward Edinger, who is he was a first generation student of Jung.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of like Jung, kind of like Alexander, like you kind of need the first generation people to like actually tell you what they were saying because they're so deep. They're so like you can't really like
Unless
I read
you're
Jung,
gonna go all in.
Yeah, unless
you
you're
need
gonna
the translator. Yeah.
Yeah. So he kind of Edinger kind of found a way to encapsulate a lot of Jung's ideas, specifically the ones that got to me at that time were the ideas about individuation,
Mm-hmm.
which is about coming to terms with your shadow, coming to terms with the ego, whether it's underinflated or overinflated,
Mm-hmm.
Becoming yourself, even if that opposes surrounding ideas. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it was called Ego and Archetype by
Meaning
Edward.
having the strength of character to be true to yourself,
find-
even if the
Yes,
environment
to go through
is,
it and figure out what
Yeah.
do you believe, what do I believe, you
be
know what
willing to have conflict in
Yes.
order to find that.
I mean?
Yeah.
Exactly. And also in that to accept the fact that like we're all humans and that only you being an individual is not going to change the world. Like it can change the world, but that's not the point of it.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's more of a process of you becoming yourself on a psychological level. and how
That is
that
what
affects
consciousness is, right? It's like
Yes.
the ego trying to burst out of
Yes.
the subconscious, right?
Yes. So that book is very like it talks a lot about like alchemical texts and like biblical satire, like biblical like narrative and different things like that. But it's all directed about the idea of the parts that hit me the hardest were the things of individuation through tribulation, through like struggles, basically, and figuring out that your ego can be hurt. You know, your ego can be hurt. It's not the end of the world. You know, you can go through a rebirth. Because at that time I was going through kind of a metaphorical rebirth where, which now I know because of Alexander technique.
Yeah.
That I had reached a point of, overwhelming tension, kind of in my life, that spilled over into the way I was playing. That basically made it so I could not play. So I had to sit my ass down and figure out,
hit the reset button.
What am I doing? How am I playing? What am I playing? Why am I playing?
Sure.
You know what I mean? At that point, my playing had become untenable at that point.
Like you
know?
didn't even know what your mission was, right?
I didn't even, bigger than that, I didn't even know why I couldn't play, like what the injury was. I just couldn't, I didn't even know. You know, now I know. I was just like, I overexerted myself and then overcompensated with tension, which eventually led to not being able to play. You know, because the muscles that we use are so small that like once you're maxed out, you're maxed out.
When you get a computer virus in those muscles, it's over.
It's over.
You can't just fake your way through that.
You can't.
Nothing works. Yeah.
You can't, man. So I went through a really serious time of like not knowing, like, can I play? Am I going to be able to play? Do I want to still play the way that I was like, you know what I mean? Because I really was going through some things in terms of like, why am I playing? Am I playing just because I feel like I have to play?
To have to go through it though, right?
You couldn't tell me that back then.
What do you? Well, I know, but like, what are you going to dive into the dark pit of despair?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
on voluntarily, not usually, right?
Not usually. No. So that book, Ego and Archetype. If you're into Jung and Jungian
I might
ideas,
check that out. Every time I try to read,
I almost
Jung
bought it.
directly,
I meant to bring it. I forgot it with the headphones, but
oh yeah, it's all good. We had no musical examples today.
Cool. Yeah, that's a good book. That's a good book for people.
That kind of fits with the next question. If you had like no money, like the price is free, if you could gift one item to everyone you know, would it be a book like that, or would it just be like a dope iPad? Because there's some value in that too. Like,
Yeah, I mean, if I needed some social capital, definitely would hand
let's
out
say
iPads.
the genie's capping you at like $1,000.
$1,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's keep it reasonable. You can't buy everyone a Tesla.
True. Man, that's another cool question. Tough though. I want to say like an Alexander lesson, kind of. Or that, or like a subscription to Headspace.
Yeah.
Something like, if I knew people were going to use the shit though.
Right.
I'm not just going to buy, I'm not just going to pay for this.
No, the genie's got you. The genie's paying for it.
Okay, he's paying for it, and these people are going to do it for sure. Then probably.
Well, I didn't say that. But,
okay.
You know, unless you want the genie to force them, and that could be a side game that we do.
Yeah, make them take this Alexander lesson for sure.
No, the real lesson is don't make deals with genies. But yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah,
But
that would be a good one. Like, I think a physical lesson would be better than a subscription that will go dormant on their phone. You know,
a physical lesson where somebody actually rebalances you for a second.
well, because imagine if they just touch you and then that's your realization.
Yes,
You might not have the realization that keeps you going from Headspace. You know,
true.
You might just be like, whatever.
That's true.
You know, Netflix.
Yeah,
But somebody engaging with you in person, there's something about the spiritual meditation, yoga
meditation.
type
You have to be kind of up for the experience. Like, I feel like you have to be ready, because there was people telling me to meditate before I meditated.
I laughed at
I
them.
just was like, why?
What a waste of time that is.
Yeah, so I'm going to sit down. And of course, like, and it's so funny because as soon as you realize the benefit, you tell people, oh man, I'm so upset about this or whatever. And you're like, you kind of want to, have you meditated?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you should meditate, but you don't want to say that because even you saying that might mean they don't meditate just because you say
Right.
it,
Right.
Yeah.
Just 'cause you said
Well,
it.
the question is, how would you ever convince someone that there is a there in meditation?
They have to be right for it. They have to be right.
I mean, there are some phraseologies that work better than others, but it's really hard to not sound like the spiritual asshole who's just being like, bro, you should just do some yoga, bro.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
and you know me, once I find things, I get so excited. You see how excited I'm about Alexander technique.
Totally.
This is me at 28. I can withhold some of the excitement. When I first learned about meditation, it was just like, did you meditate? Are you meditating?
Yeah.
Maybe you should meditate.
Right,
you know
right,
what I mean? But then I realized, okay, let me chill because everybody's not going
If
to.
that's my one response to everything, it
they're not
loses
going to
its
take it
cash
seriously.
value.
They're not going to take it seriously. You know what I'm saying? But people see the difference though when you start meditating. I feel they see it and they're like, you seem like a very calm person. You seem like a very centered person. Even though I don't feel like that at all. But they're like, what do you? And then I'm like, oh, I meditate. Okay, maybe I'll.
Yeah.
And people see you around a lot. If people I see you're consistent with it and they know you, they'll be inclined to meditate at some point,
It's the lead by example thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
exactly, man.
What are you going to tell people what to do?
Nobody does.
They
what
do
you're
the
doing.
opposite.
Exactly.
If you just show them what you're doing and they notice that you seem to have more well-being and your mood's always a little more cheerful, they might be like, hey, maybe there's something there. Or not, but that's them,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, let's end with an easy one.
Cool.
What do you think happens when you die?
When I die, man, that's rough. That's rough, man.
3 words or less.
3 words or less.
I don't know. That'd be pretty good. Yeah.
You shut up. No. When you
Oh,
die,
you can always just like defer not to answer speed round questions.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Part of me, I grew up Christian, so part of me, kind of believes. I don't know if I believe in hell 100%. I don't know if I believe it 100%. That's a tough one, but
well, you get into that
thought a lot,
definition problem.
Yeah. That's the whole thing. I've thought a lot about the idea of reincarnation. I think that probably happens more on a practical level, more of your battery charge just goes back to the big battery type of vibe. If I was to guess,
yeah,
you know what I mean. Whether we're
I mean, literally, that could be true based on science.
I think that more scientifically, and as you see as life continues to be born and people continue to be born, and where Earth keeps like the energy is coming from someplace.
Plants
It's coming
burst
from
out of the sidewalk.
Yeah, it's coming from someplace, like, in my opinion. So,
it's like a counter force to the universe, which is aiming at more and more randomness and entropy.
Yeah, it's like a self-propelling machine, kind of in my brain,
battling the upstream of time or something. Yeah,
until like I think I could be wrong, but I think Hindu beliefs believe that eventually it goes off. Like there's a cycle of like existence begins, it expands, it retracts, it ends, then another one begins.
Yeah.
You
should watch Dark.
We're at a certain level. We're at a certain number right now of whatever existence plane that we're on currently. You know, on a certain number of them, but I think that's probably has some truth to it too. If I was to guess, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just the fact that we're all born and have like really short lives, and we come in with a certain amount of innate intelligence, and our conscious intelligence is like really low. Yeah. But we have a certain amount of innate intelligence,
instincts.
Yeah. I think having kids or even like, offspring, shit like that is like its own form of reincarnation, like continuing DNA. Yeah. Continuing DNA, passing on experiences. The fact that all of our ancestors have reproduced up until now. Yeah. And we have all of we literally have their faces. Like, know what I mean? Right. That's kind of creepy. That's kind of wild to think about, like the kind of memory that's in our bodies.
We've got all of their DNA.
It's really freaky when you think about it.
And we've got the other half that makes us, like the nurture part. Yeah. We've also gotten from their imprinting of experience. And of course, some of that wasn't from them. But yeah, it's pretty remarkable that.
Wild.
And the wisdom that the kind of thing we were just talking about with music and meaning, like that we still connect to those encoded bits of wisdom in a Mahler symphony. In Harry Potter, we just rewatched all the Harry Potters, and every time I'm a little older and I rewatch Harry Potter, I go, God damn, she told a deep story. She's either smarter than she knows, or she's as smart as she knows, but she told a deep story.
Do you know what you guys should watch? Have you ever watched Avatar?
The Last Airbender?
The Last Airbender, yeah.
We watched a few episodes, right?
Okay.
I love Avatar.
Yo, I just watched through that entire thing again.
Yeah.
And it's so good.
I know.
All right.
You appreciated that in a different way when you're a kid. I was watching it when I was a kid. I was like,
well, when you're an adult, when you're an adult,
you're like,
that's deep, yeah.
Oh man, these are like the forks in the road that make life decisions, like what should I do, this way or that way? Yes. It's like Ned Stark. Do I tell the truth and die, or spoiler
Well, Ned
alert.
Stark didn't do it. We don't have to get into that.
Yeah, we'll do a separate Game of Thrones episode. Yeah. All right, I think we're at like oh, nice. Yeah, hour 30. We did it.
Cool.
Thanks for coming on.
Yo, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure, guys. Yeah. Cool. Appreciate it.
Peace. Yanka, give us the...
Bye.
There we go. All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Exploring Kodawari. If you enjoyed it, we hope you'll consider sharing it on social media and with friends. You can also help us out by leaving a rating and a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Those help us more than you would think. And if you'd like to help us out in a more substantial way, consider going over to our website to make a donation through PayPal. Links are in the episode notes for this. You can do this as a one-time donation or a recurring monthly donation. All of that support will help us to set aside time in order to create content for the podcast and the blog. And finally, please get in touch with us and say hi, either on social media or privately through email. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.